This is probably the world's most common addiction among men. From half-naked Instagram girls to OnlyFans to the corn hub, almost any man you see walking around is hooked on this stuff to some degree. And if you've ever tried to quit, you've probably noticed it can be really difficult. It's like your brain loves this more than anything else. In this video, let's find out why this is and how you can solve this problem. So the reason we get this feeling, the reason your brain craves and loves pornography seemingly more than anything else is basically the same reason why we have an obesity epidemic. It all comes down to evolutionary psychology, which is the idea that although we live in a modern world, we basically carry prehistoric brains in our skulls. We evolved for hundreds of thousands of years to survive in a world that looks very different from how we live now. And this creates a lot of problems, from obesity to porn addiction. To understand how this works, consider ice cream. It is very sweet, it is very high in fat, and it is very high in calories. Most people love ice cream. Most of us love it a little too much. And that's because to our prehistoric brain, sweetness, high fat, and high calories are great signals. That's the kind of thing you're looking for. Sweetness is an indication that you found a ripe fruit. You've gotten to a bush or a tree with fruit at just the right time. That's fantastic. And fat and high calories means you found a really good food source. High calorie density, so an animal, let's say you eat the animal fat, you're getting loads and loads of calories per bite. And in a world where you never know where your next meal is going to come from, and you might have to be able to survive for several days or sometimes longer until you find your next source of food, this is great. The more the better. So when you eat ice cream, your prehistoric brain basically goes, this is a huge win. Eat as much of this as possible. It's highly rewarding to eat ice cream because of these signals, which create, among other things, a dopamine spike in the brain. And the dopamine is there to help you feel a rewarding feeling, because again, this would be like you found a great food source, right? It's a successful hunt, but also it's there to anchor this in your memory. It's basically there to tell your brain, remember how we got this food source so we can get more of it in the future. Of course, in the modern world, these signals are kind of like misfiring in our brain. In the modern urban lifestyle, nobody's going around unsure of where your next meal might come from. If anything, there's too much of it. There's too much availability of super fatty, super delicious foods everywhere. And of course, there are negative consequences to eating too much of this food, which is things like, weight gain, obesity, diabetes, other kinds of health issues that many people in modern society suffer from. But our ancestral brain, our caveman brain, basically hasn't updated its worldview here. It just goes, hey, let's get as many calories as possible, whenever possible. And the negative consequences, they come at too much of a delay, right? Basically, you eat it, it's delicious immediately, you get these signals immediately, and then you get some problems further down the line if you overeat on this stuff. But because of this delay, because it's not immediate, that part of your brain doesn't pick up on the fact that there's a problem here, and you just keep going. Porn has a very similar effect. It's basically a different version of the exact same problem. When you watch porn, you are essentially fooling your brain into thinking that you're being successful in your reproductive efforts. Just like you have a natural drive and an urge to find food, of course, because otherwise you wouldn't survive, you also have a natural urge to find a mate and to reproduce. You have a natural sex drive. And just like the ice cream fools a part of your brain into thinking that you've just completed a successful hunt and found an amazing food source, watching porn and masturbating to porn fools that part of your brain into thinking that you've successfully found a mate and that you are procreating. So that deeply programmed need to kind of continue your lineage, to spread your genes around, is saying, yes, this is a success, huge win, let's remember this, and let's keep doing more of this. Now, there's another factor that makes this so tricky. So when you go to the grocery store and you buy some ice cream and it's easy and cheap and you can eat it right away, that is not only a signal of, hey, this is a big win, but also it seems to be a really low risk, really easy, really convenient way to get these calories. Again, your ancestral brain goes, we need calories. Whenever we find calories, we should get as many of them as possible. And the easiest, safest, most convenient way to get calories is the best. In other words, if I have to go on a long trek and hunt an animal, and maybe it's like a dangerous hunt, and that's how I get calories, or I can get a calorie source somewhere much closer without risking my life, that's what I'm going to prefer. So the easier, more convenient option is better. And of course, super easy, go to the grocery store, buy the ice cream, no risk at all. So again, your brain has these signals that go, this is great, this is fantastic, let's do more of this. With porn addiction, a very similar thing is happening. So of course, there are certain risks involved when you approach a potential partner. And if they reject you, that is a social risk. So there's like emotional pain that comes from that, but also it might make you look weak in front of the other tribe members. It's probably best to avoid that situation. Also, there could be a risk where maybe someone else is attracted to the same person, and then that could lead to a fight, or it could lead to someone getting kicked out of the tribe. So there are risks involved, and it's the same idea. The lowest risk, easiest way to procreate is the one your brain, your caveman brain, will prefer. And there, porn really gets its hooks in our brain, because it feels like, look at all the success we're having. Look at all this variety of girls, right? We're being so successful, but also there's absolutely no risk. We never get rejected. There's never a problem. The reality is that in real life, if you actually pursue sex in the real world, if you pursue a real mate, there is always risk involved. And mostly this isn't existential risk. You're not risking your life here. But even if you do everything right, even if you're a great guy and you're charming and attractive and whatnot, if you approach women and ask them out, you're going to get rejected. Unless you're a superstar celebrity, you're going to get rejected quite a lot, even if you do everything right, because a lot of the women you talk to, you're not their type, or they're already married, or already have a boyfriend or whatever, or have other reasons to basically say no. And it always stings a little. Nobody likes being rejected, and it kind of feels a bit like a failure. But even when you are successful, there are still going to be moments of conflict and pain and difficulties. In fact, this is true even if your relationship is a fantastic relationship. You can ask anyone who's been happily married for a long time, and they will tell you, yes, even in my fantastic marriage with my partner whom I love, there have been many moments of conflict, and I felt rejected, and we've hurt each other, and we've had moments of real pain between each other that we've had to work through. So what I'm saying is, in real life, it is simply not possible to successfully date and mate and partner with someone without experiencing some pain. And because we generally try to avoid pain, porn becomes such an attractive option. If you think back, I bet you'll notice that it is especially during times when you have experienced a lot of stress, or you felt really down, or maybe you did just experience some form of rejection or something like that, or interpersonal conflict. That's when your craving for porn flares up. That's when you want it even more. And that's exactly because of everything I've been talking about now. Your caveman brain is saying, hey, this is where we can get reproductive success without any of the risk. Let's go there. All right, so now that you understand the evolutionary reason why porn creates such strong cravings and why the addiction can be so hard to beat, what do we do about this? Here as well, the comparison to food can help us understand this a bit better. Because while a lot of people get hooked on junk food and end up with overweight and obesity and health problems, a lot of people also manage to handle this situation better and avoid these pitfalls. And how does that work? Everyone who has a healthy diet has found a different way to enjoy food. Like if you see someone who is in good shape and has a healthy diet, that isn't usually someone who hates ice cream or hates candy or fried food. Everybody craves this stuff, but people who manage it well find different things to enjoy. And I think there are two factors here that matter. The first has to do with shallow enjoyment versus deep enjoyment. Junk food gives us these spikes. It's like hyper stimulating to your taste buds, but there's not a lot of depth to it. Buying a fast food meal is simple and convenient and quick and gives you that quick stimulation. But if you buy your own ingredients fresh and you prepare your own meal with your own hands, that gives you a completely different quality of experience. Even more so if you make food and share food with other people. A home-cooked meal that you share with people you care about is not as stimulating as a bucket of ice cream. And yet it is a better alternative because there's a depth and a richness to it that you don't get from the ice cream. And then there's also the pride in taking care of yourself well. And again, when you share food with other people and make food for other people, the pride of taking care of others well. And that gives a whole additional dimension to the experience that you can't get from fast food. So you can successfully learn to prefer a different kind of food. Even though you might still crave those spikes of stimulation, you end up preferring this deeper, richer experience. This same idea applies to pornography compared to real sex as well. Because pornography is always going to be more hyper-stimulating than really anything you can experience when you're having real sex with a person. You cannot replicate this kind of thing that you get if you have, 15 tabs of porn open and you can swipe to the next GIF at any moment and all this kind of stuff. Like that level of intensity and variety and so on, you simply won't get that with real sex. However, porn also lacks depth to an extreme degree, really. It is extremely shallow. Whereas the depth of experience you can have when you have sex with another person, the depth of connection you can feel, especially when you have sex with someone where you have a real heart connection with that person too, and it can feel like you're melting into each other, and even just gazing into their eyes can be an ecstatic experience. That is a totally different kind of experience than anything you can ever hope to get from porn. There is a depth and richness there that, well, you have to go and explore it. You have to go and find it. And when you do, you can easily start preferring that over the shallow stimulation of porn. The second factor that I think helps with managing this is also just preferring other activities. You can easily get hooked on the stimulation and the comfort of eating food and eating food all the time. And this is something I struggled with as well, especially in the past, where that would be one of my go-to things. Every time I'm stressed or sad or whatever, I would want to eat. And one of the things I learned is to just find other sources, other ways to de-stress, other ways to unwind, other ways to deal with difficult emotions. For example, going to the gym, working out for me is one of those things. It's actually a much better way to settle myself when I kind of feel stressed or overwhelmed, is to really move my body and work up a sweat. And once I understand how much better I feel if I use exercise as kind of a coping mechanism than if I just stuff myself with food, again, I can learn to prefer that. And here the exact same thing applies to pornography, because one reason we use pornography is for the sexual gratification of it, but a huge reason we use pornography, the reason we get addicted, is because it's a coping mechanism, because we use it to deal with stress and anxiety and stuff like that. And so the exact same thing applies here. Explore things like meditation and breath work and introspective writing and exercise and other ways to deal with whatever you're trying to avoid by using porn, and you can learn to prefer those. So in summary, you get so incredibly hooked because pornography manages to trick your caveman brain into thinking that you're being reproductively successful and that you found the loophole of being reproductively successful without any risk and without any emotional pain. It's very difficult to get yourself unhooked from this by just trying to use sheer willpower, by trying to force yourself to not use porn anymore. So instead, a much better approach is to find ways to prefer the alternative, to prefer the depths and richness of real relation and real sex, and to prefer other healthier sources of both rewarding dopamine, but also healthier sources of dealing with difficult emotions and stress and anxiety instead of numbing yourself with porn use. If you've been struggling with porn addiction and you want to learn a step-by-step method to get your brain unhooked and heal from this addiction entirely, check out the first link in the description. That takes you to the Quit by Healing program, which walks you through the exact steps to take to heal your brain from porn addiction in just 21 days. So go ahead and check it out. Also, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and leave a like. It helps boost the video in the algorithm, and hopefully it ends up being shown to more people who need to hear this message. If you have any questions about this, please leave a comment below. And also, if you have suggestions for topics you'd like me to cover in future videos, go ahead and leave them below in a comment.